Hi, I'm Joel.
And I'm Naya.
And we're so excited to welcome you to your Lessons in the Wilderness.
We're actually out in the wilderness, and we are so excited in these next few sessions to actually look at in this time and in this season how we can flourish and not just, survive or make it through.
Yeah, and Naya and I, we're going to be your trail guides in this.
Joel, before we get started out on our hike in the wilderness, we're going to need to stretch. So reach up, okay? Put your arm behind your head.
Oh no, this is terrible.
How you doing? This reminds me of
soccer.
This is the
worst.
Joel, what did I tell you about this?
You said that pain is good. I'm not even going to use my hands on the hike.
Switch with us. Okay, then we're going to go to the leg.
This is called the flamingo for those at home. And you know what? God uses a lot of painful experiences and memories throughout Israel's experience in the wilderness, all to grow their faith.
Yeah, so we're going to be looking at a lot of the tests that God used with the Israelites as we go through this time in the wilderness.
All right. Hey, before we go, what test did he use?
For years, God's family was stuck as slaves in Egypt. God chose Moses to lead them out of slavery to an amazing home called Canaan, or the Promised Land. From the moment the Israelites left Egypt, God made it clear that he was with his family. He led them with a cloud during the day and a pillar of fire at night. He actually split the Red Sea in two parts so that they could walk to safety. But the journey from Egypt to the Promised Land was hard. The Israelites did not know where to find food, or where they could get to water, or when they would get to Canaan. Just 3 days after leaving Egypt, they started complaining. What are we going to drink? Now Moses knew that God hadn't freed them from Egypt and parted the Red Sea just to let them die in the desert. He asked the Lord for help. Then, about a month later, they complained, "If only the Lord had killed us back in Egypt. We had pots filled with meat, and we ate bread, and we had all we wanted. Now you have brought us here to starve." They actually wished that they would be slaves again. Have you ever complained for something without asking for help? Well, guess what? God has a plan no one could have imagined, and we find it in Exodus 16.
The Israelites had been in the wilderness for about a month when they started to complain and they were running out of food. And in Exodus 16, it says, "The whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had come out of Egypt. In the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, 'If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death.'"
You know, what we found is that tests and trials, they have a unique way of revealing what's been inside our faith this whole time. They totally expose the crud and
Pizza.
thought we might need it. And trials just have a way of unpacking kind of what's been going on in our heart this whole time. And they just reveal our faith for what it is.
It's crazy how quickly they forget what God had just done for them. He had just taken them out of Egypt, and they had every reason to believe that he would show up. But they chose to respond in fear.
See, fear and faith are really two sides of the same coin. In Mark chapter 4, Jesus is in the boat with his disciples, and there's this crazy storm that comes up. And then Jesus calms the waves, and he looks at his disciples, and he says, "Why were you so afraid, you of little faith?" It's interesting that really, Jesus could have said, after all that we've been through, why are you putting your faith in the storm and not me? Why are you putting your faith in the storm to determine your destiny and your trajectory and your hope? Why aren't you putting your faith in me? See, fear and faith are two sides of the same coin. To the Israelites in the wilderness, God could have just said, "Why are you putting your faith in the wilderness? Why are you putting your faith in this after all that we have been through?" If you're going to fear anybody, put your holy fear and put your faith in me. It's crazy that at the end of Mark 4, the disciples look at Jesus after he's calmed the waves, and it says that they are more afraid when they look at Jesus.
After the Israelites complain and their lack of faith is exposed, it's amazing. God doesn't just respond to their fear by anger. I mean, shouldn't we expect a holy God to at least turn them into salt or smite them with lightning or something?
Easy, Naya. It's a little intense.
I mean, it's amazing, really. He doesn't do that. Instead, he shows them total grace. Then the Lord said to Moses, "I will rain down bread from the heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. On the 6th day they are to prepare what they bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gather on the other days."
And so this food called manna, they have no idea what it is. They literally name it manna, which means, what is it? It's hilarious.
It is. God commands them to go out each day and grab only enough for that one day. He didn't want them to go out and get enough for 6 months. He wanted them to have to trust that he would provide for them every single day.
Yeah, I mean, this is totally against everything that they would have known. This is an agrarian society. And so when all of their crops are ready, what do? They go out and they harvest all of them, and they store them up, and they keep it, and they hope that they grew enough for that season. This is making them have to trust God every day.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that for 40 years, God provided exactly what they needed. Every single day, they had to go out, each person had to go out and get enough for just that day, and he was proving and showing to them that he is a God that provides for all of their needs. And I know that in my life, I have seen that God is provider. He's gonna give us exactly what he knows we need so that we can continue to trust him. When I was a senior in high school, I was trying to decide where I wanted to go to college. I had a couple options, and I really wanted to go to USC, but not sure if you're aware, USC is pretty expensive. So I was trying to make a wise decision, and I was praying, and I was like, God, if USC is where you want me to go, I need it to be this much cheaper. And the next day I woke up, and my great-grandma called me, and she was giving me that much money towards college. And it was the exact amount that I had prayed about. He was providing exactly how much I needed. It wasn't that college was now free and I didn't have to worry about anything. I still have to daily trust him and be wise, but he was providing for me exactly what I needed in that moment.
And for you, you might be saying, but what about those moments in my life when I don't feel like all my needs are provided? When I am in the wilderness? Well, to look at that answer, there's this guy named Jesus who shows up in the first century. And when he shows up, he starts to tell people, he tells his followers, pray, give us this day our daily bread. And then later in the Gospels, he says, you remember that bread that fell from heaven? Remember your ancestors when that happened in the wilderness? And then he says something amazing. He says that he is the ultimate bread that comes down from heaven. And that when we take part in his life, we're fulfilled. And then on the night that this Jesus is betrayed, he's with his followers at this Passover meal, and he breaks bread, and he says it's his body. He says that that's what's gonna daily sustain you in this life and in the next.
Hi, my name is Jake Olson, and I'm here with my guide dog, Quebec. Quebec and I have been together for really almost about 9 years. When I was 8 months old, I was diagnosed with a rare form of eye cancer called retinoblastoma, and after battling that cancer for 12 years, it finally took my eyesight. Hence why 2 years later, I was matched up with this guy. And one of the best things about being blind is being able to hang out with your best friend every day, your guide dog. Quebec, he guides me everywhere. I tell people he's not my GPS. I can't just say, Quebec, take me to the supermarket, but he does guide me to the supermarket. And one of the craziest things I think when I introduce people to how being blind is, they can't comprehend just trusting someone enough to hang on their shoulder, or let alone grab a dog's harness and just let him guide you. I try to have people take their friend's shoulder while having their eyes closed, and it's just, they cannot do it. And I think the same thing happens in our faith sometimes. We just can't comprehend this invisible God, this God we can't see, that we can't always hear. We know is there, but it just, the tangibles aren't necessarily there all the time. And because of that, we get very scared and we get freaked out. out, and we want to open our eyes. We want to know what's going to happen. We can't trust that God's just going to lead us to where we know where we're going, which is the best possible opportunities and future for you. And see promises in Jeremiah. I think 2 Corinthians 5:7 says it best. Walk by faith, not by sight. We aren't supposed to see our future. We aren't supposed to see where we're going. Why? Because God has it all under control. And so our job is to trust in Him every day. Walk by faith. Trust in that plan. Trust in His future for our lives, knowing it is the best. Because you know God's guiding you, holding your hand. As Quebec would say, God has a harness on His back that you're holding on to, and just let Him guide you.
See, Jesus is the bread of life. He is the one that sustains us and strengthens us. And Jesus wants us to depend on Him daily. Like, it's not like Naya, we could just go get like a 6-month supply of Jesus and then walk away. You know, Jesus wants us to learn to have to trust in Him daily, to wake up and go outside like the Israelites did, and daily to receive what He has given us. See, manna wasn't earned. It was just received. And Jesus wants you to daily receive the grace that He has given you. Because His grace, like the manna, is new every morning. We're praying that during this wilderness season that you would come to know that grace that's provided, and that's on display, and that's here for you.